1961, Africa has witnessed a 1/3 reduction in agricultural productivity due to climate change, a stark reminder of the urgent need for adaptation. Yet, much of the world is just waking up to the merits of restorative agriculture, a practice that already resonates with African farming practices. By building on the wealth of indigenous knowledge, we can scale, enhance, and even monetize our agricultural systems. This enables us to unlock the huge potential in our agricultural land assets, representing 2/3 of the world's uncultivated, underutilized arable land, to feed our growing populations, and to do so in harmony with our invaluable natural carbon sinks. Additionally, the restoration and expansion of Africa's natural carbon sinks are not just an environmental imperative. In fact, they are an unparalleled economic gold mine. They have the potential to absorb millions of tons of CO2 annually, which should translate into billions of dollars if we were living in a fair world, improve livelihoods, and millions of opportunities across this continent. And I was having a conversation yesterday about a banker of one of the big multinational banks, and he was telling me about Africa's GDP. And GDP is about assets, it's about what you have. We have the carbon sinks that serves the world, cleans our environment, acts as sequestration of carbon that is produced by others. But we get nothing for it. It's not anywhere in our balance sheet. Everybody's assets are in their balance sheet. Some of ours are not in that balance sheet. The day we put our whole assets in our balance sheet, you will know that we are a very wealthy continent. And let me say, we do all that, but it doesn't count for much. But we do it anyway, because we love this world, because it's our home. And that is why the conversation of North versus South must come to an end. Who did what? It's not a conversation that we have the luxury to engage in, because when the apocalypse happens, it will happen for all of us, for the entire humanity. Let me say this. We do this, and all of this comes while safeguarding our biodiversity. We are careful to make sure that that is in place. Our renewable energy resources are not just environmental necessity. They are the ultimate catalyst of radical socio-economic prosperity. They can fuel sustainable development, drive economic growth, create jobs, and also uplift millions from energy poverty, all while reducing our carbon footprint continentally and globally. The possibilities are not just promising, they are transformative. Africa can power all our energy needs with renewable resources. The continent has enough potential to be entirely self-sufficient with the mixture of wind, solar, geothermal, sustainable biomass, and hydropower. In Africa, we can be a green industrial hub that helps other regions achieve their net zero strategies by 2050. In other words, what I'm saying is unlocking the renewable resources that we have in our continent is not only good for Africa, it is good for the rest of the world. Because we not only are driving our own growth, but we are ready to share these resources with the rest of the world. And by doing so, we will assist the rest of the world in ensuring that we move towards the net zero target that we all set for ourselves. And for Africa, renewable resources, it is not just the volume, but also the non-seasonality of our renewable energy that stands out. The nearly year-round sunshine makes Africa's solar potential particularly unique, perfectly suited to industrial energy demands, something that is challenging in other areas, especially in temperate climates. Kenya, for example, serves as a good example of what is possible. Our national grid currently operates at 3 gigawatts, with 93% of that power being renewable. Our ambition is audacious yet achievable: 100% renewable by 2030 and a 100 gigawatt grid entirely renewable by 2040. A serious challenge in bridging the investment gap in order to enable the continent meet its energy needs is the creation of demand on sufficient scale to provide incentives for appropriate private investment in energy infrastructure development. Industrial energy at scale is therefore necessary to anchor energy demand as a means of tackling the widespread energy poverty still prevalent across our continent. The numbers are stark. Nearly 600 million Africans lack access to electricity. Another 150 million grapple with unreliable power. And almost 1 billion have no access to clean cooking energy. But the abundance of our renewable resources, the possibilities offered by new technologies, and opportunities created by new climate financing offers enormous possibilities for us. We have the capability to provide reliable and cost-effective energy access to all Africans by 2030.
For many years, the climate change negotiations under the UNFCCC have remained a contestation between North and South, with deepening mistrust and a widening divide between North and South about two actions that should reverse the impacts of the challenge that poses existential threat to the survival of humanity and the planet, that is adaptation and mitigation. The outcome of this summit, then, should seek to not only provide a neutral ground for conversation and restore hope and dignity for millions of people whose livelihoods have been turned upside down due to the ranging climate impacts manifested by shifting seasons, drying rivers, erratic rainfall, diseases, compounding food crisis, and forced solutions, but should also be responsive to African people's realities, aspirations, desires, and imperatives of climate justice. Top of these should be adaptation, underpinned by the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. It is not just about coping with the impacts of climate change, but also about enhancing our solidarity in prosperity, resilience, reducing our risk, and seizing the opportunities which are coming with this challenge.
This summit for Africa, by Africa, will help us tackle the climate crisis we see and feel all around the world. I speak to you today not just as the head of the UNFCCC, but as the former minister from a developing country. So let us talk about what we can do to stabilize the climate and build resilient societies in Africa and throughout the world. Development is, as it should be, a priority. I know personally the destruction that climate-related disasters can wreak on years of development. But the world is asking for a lot. Develop, but don't do it in the carbon-intensive way that we did in the past. Therefore, it is a global responsibility to collectively work out how we do that. Every day this week, we'll be putting our heads together to discuss how to build resilience to climate risks, transition to a low-emission economy, and collaborate on solutions, transforming our economies through a just transition that benefits all sectors of society.
The primary goal of this summit is to propel our collective efforts on climate change and sustainable development forward. The fundamental driver of success for African green transition will be the availability of resources for investment, and these must be accompanied by the strengthening of the ability of the African countries to mobilize their own resources, their own domestic resources. And I believe in Africa we can do it. We have the resources. Let us start allocating the resources on the environmental agenda when we are doing our national budget. I believe that we have this capacity. So the fundamental driver of this success, as I say, for African green transition will be the availability of resources for investment, and those must be accompanied by strengthening of the ability of the African country to mobilize our own resources, build on the foundation of solid and inclusive economic growth. As a continent, previous growth models have been predicated largely on the sheep production and export of African raw material with a minimal value addition. We have to start adding value and create jobs for our youth and our women.